The Boone Pickens School of Geology began as a small group of classes from within the Oklahoma A&M Chemistry Department, but even then, there was a need for a field camp. In 1928, professors were already scouting for a location in the Arbuckle Mountains of southern Oklahoma to use for botany, zoology, biology, and geology. And by 1930, 200 A&M geology students camped at Price's Falls, learning engineering geology, joined by another geology class from Kansas. Following that camp, paleontology students spent a week-long trip traveling to various fossil sites around the state. Interest in geology grew with the petroleum industry, and in spring of 1947, geology finally became its own department, with 230 majors under the direction of Dr. V. Brown Monette, son of OU's School of Geology director Dr. Victor E. Monette, and the two universities began preparations for a permanent, jointly owned field camp to use for the required field courses for geology. Up to that point, summer field camps had been run in the Arbuckles, but the summers were hot, humid, and miserable, so the universities decided to move camp to Colorado, where it would be much cooler. Camp Carson was considered, but in 1949, they were told by the Florence Chamber of Commerce and other sources about an available area on 8 Mile Creek near Canyon City. OU began renting 24 acres of land from local landowner Les Houston, and the Oklahoma Geological Camp was born. Mr. Houston helped prepare and maintain the site, planted cottonwoods, and was always there to greet the students when they arrived. That first summer, over 300 students from OU and Oklahoma A&M Geology, as well as A&M Civil Engineering, attended the camp, over 3 4-week sessions, 125 of which arrived for the August session, the highest number in camp history, all men and paying a course fee of $85. They had a kitchen tent and a 16 by 20 foot tent used both as a mess hall and classroom, both of which were complete with concrete slab floors and electricity. Students, faculty, and staff bathed in the creek and slept on the ground in 20 16 by 16 foot squad tents from Army surplus, with no amenities or floors, and which leaked and flooded during the unusually heavy rains of the early summer sessions. The students hiked the mountains and were taught to use alidades, plane tables, Jacob staffs, and Bronson compasses to survey, map, and report the area's geological units. The first year was a great success, and after the last camp session ended, Mr. Houston and professors from both universities arranged the construction of a cement building to store the tents and equipment in, and began to pour cement slab floors for the tents with help from some eager student volunteers. That winter, Mr. Houston installed 5 showers at his house up the road and bought 100 Army surplus cots that he would rent out to the students for $1 per week. The showers were used for a number of years, and the students would line up and wait in the driveway. The whole Houston family helped maintain and support the camp throughout the years. Mrs. Eloise Houston washed laundry for the students and staff. Mr. Houston and his daughter Tiny would help with construction, cleaning the cabins, and hunting rats. Through the 50s and 60s, more buildings would be constructed, modified, and improved as funds were available, all by geology staff with the help of eager students. The next permanent structures built were the mess hall, which doubles as a classroom and study hall, the combined kitchen and serving area, and the office, along with electricity and a water system. Showers were built in the late 50s, and once the main buildings were finished, the tents were slowly replaced with wooden cabins, starting with the Ritz, and eventually ending up with 14 student cabins, housing 6 students each, and 7 staff and faculty cabins. The drafting room was completed in 1967. By 1951, the complex was the largest of the Canyon City field camps, with 200 students throughout the summer. In the summer of '53, women were finally allowed to go to camp, though it was not required yet. There were 11 in the first group, all from OU, KU, and Southern Methodist University. Facilities were built on the west side of the creek for them, and they did all the same work in the field that the men did. A camper from that summer later wrote, "As I remember, our camp was the first to have women students. In our get ready for camp meeting, we were threatened with our lives if there were any problems, improper actions, or interference. The girls were housed in tents, as we were, across the creek, along with the cooks. The creek was the boundary. No men allowed across the creek. The only thing I remember was that they were smart, and as I recall, they made better grades than I did." From 1959 up through the 70s, Oklahoma A&M became Oklahoma State University, and the camp doubled as a geology training camp for high school teachers under a National Science Foundation grant as a summer science institute. and the teachers were taken out into the field to learn geology and paleontology. The school teachers attending the camp had good times and were up to all kinds of shenanigans. For example, the students from the 1971 session started their own camp newsletter, titled The Hogback Crier and complete with comics. In 1985, OU decided that the camp was too expensive and too much of a responsibility to run for a low profit, and terminated their part of the 50-year lease for camp land in hopes that they could eventually get their own camp. However, they continued to share the camp with OSU by alternating semesters. OSU ran the camp for the early summer sessions, and OU ran the late summer sessions. Over the years, the camp has witnessed a number of natural disasters, and campers have even helped in search and rescue. July of 1952 saw one of the largest forest fires, called the Tallahassee Creek Fire, that was blown out of control by the high winds and destroyed over 30,000 acres of Fremont County, all while a number of smaller fires broke out in the county. One of these fires was in the Upper Beaver Creek area near the camp, and was extinguished with help from the students, 20 of whom stood guard all night to keep it from flaring up again. 10 years later, in 1962, another large forest fire burned through 600 acres of the Upper Beaver Creek area, and the students helped to bring it under control. The district forester for the BLM commented on their help, saying that they are the best firefighters I have ever seen. Over the years, the camp has helped to fight a number of smaller fires, and in some years, local fires have ended field trips, such as the Smoky Bowl, when fires smoked the students out of the mixing bowl. While the camp has survived forest fires, there have also been at least 2 major floods in 8 Mile Creek that destroyed parts of the camp. In 1968, a flash flood caused around $1,000 in damage, destroying the bridge and all of the water, electric, and gas lines on the west side of the creek, and flooding the cabins in up to 8 inches of water. Everything on the east side survived with little damage. The 2006 flood was much more devastating. 5 cabins were completely washed away, 1 was damaged, and others were caked in mud. A campaign to rebuild the camp with new cabins was started, and alumni, various energy companies, and other donors immediately pitched in to help, all donating thousands of dollars to the cause. With their help, 8 brand new insulated cabins and 2 wash houses were built, along with new plumbing. No matter how much the camp has changed and people come and go over the years, some things never change. While field work has evolved over the years, from using a plane table and alidade for mapping along with aerial photos and map boards, to using digital mapping methods with GPS-capable iPads and ArcGIS, students still learn how to use the almighty Brunton transit compass for orienteering and measuring the attitude of formations, and Jacob's staffs are still the weapon of choice for measuring units for stratigraphic columns. Even today, students learn and use field techniques at Red Canyon, then map and describe areas of Grape Creek, the Mixing Bowl, Nat Hollow, and Twin Mountain, trying to interpret their history. In their free time, students have a number of ways to relax and stay entertained, ranging from fishing in the creek to movie nights on the big screen, and stumps tournaments with rock hammers are fan favorites. Some of these antics have turned into camp traditions, the most popular of which is leaving their graffiti on bed frames and the drafting room walls. Many students over the years have left comments about their favorite or least favorite sites, tips and advice for future campers, quotes, jokes, inspirations, and art, all along with simply signing their names, year, and universities. The camp has been a large part of the local community from the beginning. As early as 1956, the camp has invited the ranching families in the area to dinner banquets, both as a way for the neighbors to meet the students and as a thank you for letting the students hike on their properties. Professors from camp also give lectures every so often at conventions and for the local geology clubs. Les and Eloise Houston leased the land to OU and OSU in the first place, and were always involved with camp life from the beginning, helping to maintain the camp and take care of the students. Les was always there to greet the students until the day he died. Tiny and Ernie Striegel always supported the camp 100%. Tiny was the honorary camp matriarch and was always there to meet the students and would come over to read poems to them during the summer. During the off-season, she took care of the camp, oversaw construction projects, and kept the directors updated on anything that was happening. In 1990, they donated the land to OSU in memory of her father, Les Houston, on the condition that the camp continue to be used to teach field geology. In 2003, she came to OSU and was honored and given a plaque for her services and support at camp. And after the 2006 flood, she was featured in State Magazine, calling people to help and donate to rebuild the camp. Tiny constantly donated money to the School of Geology to help maintain the camp. And in 2009, she included OSU in her will specifically to benefit the field camp after her death in the form of a charitable gift annuity for the Tiny Striegel Endowed Fund for the Les Houston Geology Field Camp. That way, she would always be there for us. There have been many camp cooks and maintenance staff over the years to help take care of everything. The cook's days start early and end late, while feeding up to 100 students in some years. The maintenance staff, often with help from assistants and professors, keep the camp and equipment cleaned up and running. During the off-season when nobody's around, neighbors David and Gail Rooks take care of the camp and make sure everything is working well, and they never fail to stop by and say hi when camp is in session. We're always happy to see them. Directors and professors have collectively trained over 1,000 students between 1949 and 2024. Over that time, they've accumulated all kinds of fun stories, such as when one student dropped a Brunton compass in a latrine, and it had to be fished out by Drs. Moore and Frederickson, and the one time that students had a Jake Staff fencing tournament on the basketball court. And finally, our alumni have been great supporters of our field camp. Many of them were former students themselves at the camp, and have fond memories and exciting stories from their time here. So they often give generous donations to the camp to help it continue for new students to come and make their own stories. Their help, as well as everybody else's who works here, is greatly appreciated. And we hope that the camp continues to run and improve for the next 75 years. OSU Field Camp by Tiny Striegel. Let me tell you a story about a camp that I knew, a geology field camp owned by OSU. It's been a field camp here for quite a long time. First was established in 1949. The University of Oklahoma really started it then, with headquarters in Norman when it began. It was a partner with Stillwater A&M. Later A&M became OSU and renamed. It was on a land lease from Les Houston. Les was my dad. And it grew like topsy, no formal plans made. A large tent was set up for dining, quite plain. And numerous small tents were laid out the same. Well, it grew through the years, a kitchen was set, and a cement block hall that is standing there yet. And cabins were constructed on cement foundations, and then the tents were removed from their locations. All the building was done by the students and staff. No politics here, no political graft. The cement slabs were poured in various sites. Some didn't hold up, the mixture not right. A well was dug and the water lines laid. It cost only $50 and no help was paid. It was great to have tap water right in the sink. The showers were at our house, just up the creek. A gas pump was put in to reduce expenses yet, and a neighbor dug the hole for the tank to be set. My mother did laundry for the students and staff. It was a fun time, and we had many laughs. The boys, only boys then, sat outside by our gate, in line for a shower when they had to wait. And they'd kick at toads, catching bugs there, you know, until Dad put out iron toads and bruised many a toe. We battled mice and many rats, too. One winter our rat count was 182. We worked hard all winter. It was a game of ours. We put in new ovens, and we put in the showers. We replaced the WPA privies with toilets that flush. We repaired the buildings and cleaned up the brush. The cabins were cleaned. We put up the flag. There was a lot to be done, never to lag. What a thrill to be ready for camp folks to come. And my dad was right there to welcome each one. In some years there were 100 students and employees. And to welcome them here for my dad was a joy. Many years have gone by, some good and some lean. My dad is now gone, and this is my tribute to him. We never know what the years have in store, but I pray that the camp will be here many more. Well, there were a few years, I think only 2, that the camp here was empty, and the students were few. And management problems, they all seemed so large. But all's looking up now. Jim Puckett's in charge. There's not much more to say. Don't know what is in view. But do keep it going. I'm trusting in you. It's a beautiful place and lovely as it can be. is well worth saving. Please keep it for me.